According to domesticviolencestatistics.org, in 1999 they reported that every 9 seconds in the U.S. a woman is either assaulted or beaten. And battering women became a nationwide concern in 1983. In 2010, Harbinger wrote a magazine that was published in domesticviolences.com. And in this article, he mentioned that 85% of domestic violence victims are women, and that is the leading cause in injury for women today. He also mentioned that in that 85% are many pregnant women who are beaten every day. He also mentions that many women don't report when they're beaten because they're either embarrassed or too shy. In another article by Lex called Every 9 Seconds in April 2013, published in the Core magazine, she mentions that she was one of those victims who was violated, and she mentions how she didn't want to go and tell the police as well because she was just embarrassed, but when they finally saw her face and they reported it, they told her the abuser would not be prosecuted because it was too late. So, and they also forgot to mention that she was protected under the Violence Against Women Act. We should be aware of the harm that may come to women, and I've done extensive research on this topic. Learning about domestic violence on women will give you a better understanding of what many women are faced with in their daily lives. First, I will begin talking about the types of abuses there are in domestic violence. Next, I will start to discuss the causes of domestic violence on women, and lastly, I will explain the consequences. The different types of abuse are physical, sexual, emotional, economic, and psychological. In physical abuse, it's when a woman is either hit by either your fists or any type of object. Sexual abuse would be when a woman is usually raped. Emotional is when they are hurt with words or any type of other mean words. Economic is when someone is trying to take hold of your money and they're not giving it to you, they're trying to control. Psychological is when you're having threats. So, now that we have discussed the different types of abuse, I will start explaining the causes. Many women who are battered are hit because the men feel like they have the power in the relationship. Many women who are victims have discussed how the arguments usually start because they don't want to do what the guy tells them to do, and it gets them really angry because they feel they have the power in the relationship. They want to hit these women and get their way. Now that statistics show that at least once in their lifetime a woman will either be assaulted or beaten. They also mention how many teenage girls nowadays are being assaulted as well in their relationships. Usually when they tell their boyfriends they want to break up, they don't like it and they start hitting them to get their way. Now that I have discussed the different types of abuses, I will begin to discuss the consequences there are in domestic violence. So many women develop health issues, which are asthma, joint disease, bladder infections, they get migraines, and they usually develop this after they've been really big. Many other psychological issues they will go through depression, they'll have low self-esteem, they'll also have a lot of flashbacks of the assault, and they also have fears of intimacy. Now that I have discussed the different types of consequences there are, I will begin to explain another type of consequence, which is for those who actually hit the women, they will get a restraining order, or the judge will decide whether they have to pay for damages, and they'll also they'll have the loss of job opportunities, and they'll have to serve a 52-week class on the consequences of domestic violence. Now that we have discussed the consequences, we can move on. Domestic violence is important because, it's important to know about domestic violence to know what women are faced with. First, I discussed the different types of abuses there are in domestic violence. Second, I discussed why domestic violence occurs in women. And lastly, I discussed the consequences. In 1954, Scotland Yard said there are about 20 murders a year in London. Some of them are not all that serious, but some of them are just husbands killing their